Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga, and we are back today to talk about Clovers, preferably black ones, as we review the Royal Knights arc, which I suppose is the Black Clover take on the standard shonen tournament arc, which was quite enjoyable. I'm always a sucker for that kind of format, yes I am. And there was plenty to like about it, but of course some minor stuff that made me go a bit, But before we do the thing with the talking, if you're enjoying these Black Clover dives, then I would highly encourage you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Numbers are telling me that you guys seem to be quite enjoying these videos, so do keep it up, because I refuse to read comments, because I know that someone, somewhere, is going to spoil something. I know you're out there. Let's get into it though. The Royal Knights arc is probably the most simplistic story that we've encountered thus far in Black Clover, and it takes place almost exclusively in one location with one core mission statement that we don't really diverge from. That isn't to say it's a bad thing, I'm just very used to the sudden twists of Black Clover now. However, tournaments are a great shonen staple. Almost every battle manga will feature one in some form over the course of its publication, and it's because they're kind of a super format. The standard belief is that tournament arcs get used as an excuse to amp up action, as well as artificially inflate drama under this kind of construct, and yes, that can be true. However, what's always struck me as great about tournament arcs is how they can be used to showcase character development and interactions. So for example, in the Royal Knights arc, we get to see a whole ton of bizarre action-based interactions such as Asta vs Magna, which you would just never have the opportunity to see anywhere else because coming up with a reason for them to fight would be rather convoluted. And Tabata does spice things up quite nicely by mixing up our Magic Knight squad, so it's not like our standard Black Bulls versus Golden Dawn, which it very easily could have been. Instead, we get this nice pick and mix, a bit of Noel here, a bit of there, cap it off with a mushroom, and delicious. But it results in some really captivating teams and a lot of fun dynamics. My favorite of which is Asta's team, which we will get into. But firstly, I do have to say that as much as I do love tournament arcs, I was kind of disappointed by the setup for this one. Mostly because, to be perfectly frank, I still don't understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and even how we're doing it. Like, I do get that the general point is to form some sort of super squad to attack the Eye of the Midnight Sun, which is cool. But why are we doing it with these specific people? We have a total of 48 candidates, which are a mixture of ranks, but dominated by rookies with a couple of vice captains and even one captain. So how did we make the decision to, I don't know, get here? Was this an invitation-only tournament, or was it open to anyone who wanted to be here? If so, why aren't there tons of other Magic Knights vying for this allegedly prestigious position, especially the more noble ones, which is like, all of them? Or why is it this specific group of the Black Bulls and not everyone else? Where's Vanessa, Ghost, Charmy? Well, Charmy is here, but not to participate, but do you know what I mean? And I guess I could accept the reasoning that the only people here are the ones with something to prove, but at the same time, that's kind of at odds with the purpose of the selection exam itself, which is to find the best of the Magic Knights, in order to pit them against the greatest threat currently facing the Clover Kingdom. So on the one hand, we have this profoundly important purpose and outcome, but the process to get there is almost entirely frivolous, because we have this completely arbitrary group of people, mostly populated by hothead rookies, competing for this monumentally important task. Oh, and I should mention that Mr. Wizard King states that part of the reason for the exam was to weed out the unconscious betrayal, which does present itself within Langris. Langris. But even then, unless you're going to put the entirety of the Magic Knight forces in this situation, you're basically just crossing your fingers and hoping that the betrayer is one of these arbitrary people. It's just a less than solid setup, but you know what? It's also kind of fine. I can get over the structure and the motivations and everything else because Tabata's true skill shines in characters, and there is a lot to work with here, starting with someone who almost automatically became a favorite of mine, being Zora. I love his design, I love his magic, his backstory is appropriately tragic, and everything about him comes together to form this very compelling presence. And it was very interesting because at first I thought he was going to be this perfect philosophical counter to Asta. Our protagonist who loves teamwork, and then here's Zora who insists on working alone. But in the end, the two of them turned out to have an extraordinarily similar value system, especially when it comes to their ideals of the Magic Knights. Or I suppose in Zora's case, his father's ideal of what the Magic Knights were, which is kind of mirrored by Asta's words in their final round. I also love the idea that despite his very villainous design and dickish nature, Zora didn't actually turn out to be our main antagonist of the arc, or really an antagonist at all. He was a fun red herring in that regard, and he turned into a solid ally quite quickly, with he and Asta even giving each other cute little compliments during their second match. And in the end, they were actually a pretty great team, and I would love to see Zora just flat out join the Black Bulls. He's perfect for them, being a lowly peasant outcast who goes against the grain, but that's really the only way I could see him actually joining the Magic Knights, because I don't think there's any other squad that really embodies his father's ideals. With that said, I do also think it was just a little bit weird that nobody recognized the fact that Zora was impersonating another Magic Knight, a vice captain no less. I mean, the Wizard King, sure, he's a cheeky mofo and he'd let something like this just happen, but did nobody else know what the vice captain of the Purple Orcas looked like? It was quite shocking showing just how easily Zora managed to get away with his facade. Moving on though, also on Team Asta, we had Mimosa, a selection that made me audibly sigh quite strongly at first because I thought that she was just going to be some sort of Noelle replacement who would go on to spend most of her time doting over Asta and maybe do something useful on one occasion, but that I am happy to say was not at all the case. Mimosa was actually kind of a boss in this arc. She even took the role of leader in the first round and had some choice words for her brother when she stated, "Make sure you win this match because in the next round, Asta and I intend to slaughter you," which is the kind of determined sass that I really love. Plus, she also fit in perfectly with the whole team dynamic on so many different levels as well. She was great for protecting the crystal, she countered Sol's golem, and Mimosa was even able to heal Asta, which is pretty perfect because his crowning feature tends to be how heavily injured he becomes in combat. And it made me realize that in many ways, Mimosa is a much more natural combat partner for Asta than Noelle. And I guess I just want to say congratulations to Tabata for taking a character that I really did not care for and turning her into Mimosa Vermilion. Speaking of Vermilions, or Vermilii, whatever the collective noun is, Mimosa's brother Kirsch was a surprising favorite of mine. I mean, everything about him is horrible, but in the most hilarious of ways. He's not like Noelle's siblings that are just kind of sickening. Kirsch has a lot of redempting qualities just when it comes to pure comedy, and a great selection of one-liners for everyday use, such as my favorite, which is, "Silence, filth, you're polluting my air." But in addition to this, he's actually quite helpful as well, giving Magna and Sol some very well-conveyed advice regarding how to more effectively use their magic, which was a bit of a surprise for that kind of character. And of course, he does have a change of heart at the end where he discovers that his definition of beauty is narrow and lacking, meaning that he should be a nicer character for us to follow in the future. Maybe. Probably, that's how most of them tend to go. But as for the centerpiece of the arc, this was unexpected, but it all spawns from Finral and Langris. Ugh, Langris. And honestly, this was probably the matchup I was least excited for because by that point in the tournament, the format was dragging just a little bit, but Tabata clearly felt that as well and decided to switch things up by having Finral lose and Langris go ever so slightly insane, causing a very high stakes conflict against Asta and his team to commence. And so it actually became the only match in this arc that I was solidly invested in because it had the weight of Finral behind it. And in retrospect, it was also a really great payoff for the layering that Tabata had been conducting in previous arcs, gradually building Finral up through stuff like the Underwater Temple, then introducing Langris at the Star Festival, and now having all of that work coming to a boiling point here in this arc, which also gave us a very nice victory for Asta in his newly controllable transform state, because despite the fact that this match was officially a tie, it wasn't really about winning in the end, more about making sure that Langris was defeated with his oddly Eye of the Midnight Sun vibes. With that said, the greatest moment of the arc by far belongs to Finral when he sent Seke directly to Yami sitting on the toilet through spatial magic. That got quite a laugh from me. I'm still laughing about it now. But we also had a captain participating, Rill of the Aquadeers, also known as the Suckiest Squad, now after the Black Bulls have broken their losing streak. And I do like his concept quite a bit with the whole misunderstood artist vibes. He's also pretty terrifying given that his artistic muse is essentially his opponent, and the stronger his opponent is, the greater the desire to create. He's the sort of character I like because he does possess amazing power, but quite strict limitations on how it can be used. So he's not in any way overpowered because he does have to meet that mental criteria. I find that sort of stuff much more satisfying than someone with phenomenal power who can access it easily and use it to perfection. That sort of thing kind of bores me, which, is sort of what Yuno is becoming. After Asta's tie, the final matchup sees Yuno directly take on a captain, and not only that, but he does win via a technicality. It was Rill's fault, I guess, but I was hoping to see Yuno lose here for the first time. I really wanted him to have his Asta moment of hitting a ceiling, then being forced to go away and figuring out how to penetrate said ceiling, but instead Yuno is perfect as per usual, which I suppose is fine, because it does counterbalance Asta's wild imperfection. Yuno gets to where he is through seemingly no effort at all, meanwhile Asta needs to struggle with all of his might at every step. Still makes me think that Yuno must have been born a noble child though, because this natural talent is very comparable to theirs, if not greater. In fact, I would say definitely greater. As for noble children, I would be remiss not to mention that Noelle got to take a step forward here by soundly defeating her brother, Solid Silver, which is such a cool name for such a disappointing existence. And my favorite part of this whole conflict was seeing the split panel of Noelle in the present versus Noelle in the past, because it was a great indicator of showing how much she's changed and how ready Noelle was to take on Solid. And she did it, so you know what, screw you, Solid Silver, and you other siblings, you better watch your backs as well. And there were moments of other interest, like Klaus's brief moment of growth and the fungus magic user whose name I don't remember, but it was pretty funny. Overall though, this arc was pretty straightforward. There were a couple of surprises as well as a banquet of what is now becoming becoming the signature Tabata micro flashback, and just a lot of character growth all around, which is the reason why I can look past the more structural issues of the arc and in fact the series in general. If these characters were even mildly less well written, then I think I would have lost interest in Black Clover a bit of a while ago. However, I can't help but want to read about them. I want to see each and every one of them overcome their various obstacles in life, and Tabata has a great method of allowing a scale of empathy that you normally wouldn't find with secondary or even tertiary characters. In very badly written series, you can't even find it with the primary characters. So I'm guessing we'll find out what the actual results of this exam thing were and where this bizarre troop of individuals is going to be taken during the next arc, so yeah, I'm gonna do that right now. But that pretty much does it for this blind review of the Royal Knights arc, and what do you guys think? Please do leave your thoughts in the comments below or even join my Discord server. And if you're keen for some more Black Clover content, then please do go and check out some of my other videos or even subscribe to the channel for very maybe regular Black Clover goodness delivered straight into your YouTube feed. But for now, this has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.